This program is dedicated for our Girl Scout ambassadors. My name is Honora and I work for the Girl Scouts of Suffolk County, and I thought it'd be a really fun idea to do a tie-dye session or program just because summer's coming, spring's here. So I love tie-dye, hence what I'm wearing, my tie-dyed t-shirt. So I'm going to show you how to tie-dye a t-shirt and how to recycle a pillowcase into a tie-dyed beach bag or tote. And we'll also be learning how to make cupcakes that are tie-dyed inside, including the frosting on top. So let's get started. As one of the activities that we have for this program was a nature resist tie-dye and a summer beach tote, or you could even use it as a grocery bag if you'd like. So what you'll need, and I definitely recommend, is having a pair of gloves because you'll be using some food coloring or Kool Aid Packets. So with both of them, they're equally as sufficient to use for your tie-dye. I was only able to find the cherry Kool Aid, so I will only be using that as my red component, but you can pick any colors you'd like, and then I'm probably going to be using my food coloring to use that. And then you'll also need a plastic bag. I'm using a garbage bag just to cover the surfaces that I will be using to spray. And you'll also take a nice nature walk. You can go with your family. While you're out with your family on your nature walk, you'll collect some natural items outside. I'm going to bring you outside when I show you how to actually do it. I have a couple of rocks and a couple of leaves. So what a resist painting is, in an art term, is when you have a shape or an imprint of an object. And so when we're doing the nature resist on our tie-dye, the color is only going to spray where you spray, and it's going to spray on top of your object so that you have a resist, so that you could actually see the shapes of the objects. And you'll need a pillowcase. Luckily, I have a pillowcase that I accidentally, I guess I fell asleep with a pen in my bed, and I got blue ink on it, so I'm going to use this. It's a great way to recycle this pillowcase. And then you'll need scissors. So I'm going to grab my scissors, and mine's pretty long, so I want to cut the pillowcase about halfway. I think that'll be a good size for my tote. And you'll keep the extra fabric to use as the arms for your bag. What also might be helpful is using some clothespins so that you can hang your tote to dry if you'd like. So I'm going about halfway into this fabric. Let me grab a better scissor. Hold on. All right, I got a fabric scissor. I was using a smaller scissor, so it really didn't work as well, but you can use a craft scissor as well if you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to save this fabric. So the end of it, if you can see, has a thicker layer. Let's see if you can see. Right here where that seam is, I'm going to use that as my straps. And what's nice is now we have like a little bag. This would be great to put your beach items in. Okay, so we're gonna go outside so that we can dye it. I don't want to get it all over my carpet, so I'd rather do it outside on the porch. I have a little spray bottle. I'm only going to be using one color. I'll be using multiple colors on my t-shirts, but for my beach bag, I'm only using one color. I'm using blue, and I used a gel food coloring, and I filled this up with warm water, and I gave it a nice shake. I recommend for brighter colors because if you don't buy a tie-dye kit, and by all means, if you'd like to use a tie-dye kit for this program, you're more than welcome to. This is just a more simple, less expensive way of doing so if you don't have those items available. So when you're using food coloring or Kool Aid, after a while the colors might turn out lighter. So I added about 10 drops of my blue food coloring because I want it to be a deeper blue, so that after it dries and after I rinse it, I will be able to not let it fade as much as it would normally. Okay, so I'll get my gloves on and we'll meet you outside. Now I forgot, before we go outside, I wanted to show you how we're gonna add the straps. I think that we should put the straps on before we dye it. So you'll need some thread for this and a sewing needle. You can use any type of thread. I'm using embroidery thread and a thick needle. So this is a pretty simple stitch. So I might use this whole thickness of the thread, but you can make it thinner, thicker, however you want to do it. Might take a couple tries to get your string through, but that's all right. It's probably gonna take me a couple minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to pull my string all the way through. Not all the way, I'm sorry, halfway through, like so. And what I'll do is I will tie the end of the thread into a knot, so that way when I pull the thread through the fabric, that it'll have a stopper. Now the stitching is going to be on the inside, so you don't have to worry about a little extra thread. So I'm going to change my view of my phone, camera, so that you can see the process of stitching and weaving through the fabric. So I cut the end of my pillowcase, the extra fabric that we had. So I have one strip, and I have my second strip, and these are going to be the straps for my bag. So let me see if I can get this so you can see a little clearer. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. All right, so the way that we would do this, I'm going to show you a simple way to put the straps on the bag. So if you look at a bag, the straps are rarely sewed on the outside of your bag. So we're going to do the stitching on the inside. So I'm going to take one end of my strap, and I'm going to tuck it in just a tiny bit into the actual bag, like so. All right, and then we have our needle and a thread, and at the end of my thread, I'm going to be tying this knot again. And this is going to be a simple stitch. You don't have to go too crazy with it. So what I'll start by doing is my first stitch is going to be coming from the inside. Right? So let's see if we can get a little closer. Okay. So if you can see, here's my strap, here's my pillowcase. And because it's overlapped, that means there's fabric to connect these two pieces together. So I'm going to come in from the back and pull my string all the way through, and it'll be stopped by that knot. Now vertically, so I want this to be a straight line, I'm going to go and push my needle, I'm going to skip a little space and pull my string through the fabric. Okay, so now we have one stitch. Now this part is going to be continuing the process, but I'm just going to show you the inside of this. So if we flip this so that you can see where the stitching is, the back of here has my knot, right? But then the front has the stitching. So where the stitching just came through, I want to do the exact same process that I did in the front. I'm going to skip a space, poke it through my fabric, and I'm going to pull it out through the front. And then, right where that space is, I'm going to meet the fabric, meet the thread to create my second stitch. Okay, again, so now same process. We're going to skip a space, pull it through, come back, and push it through, pull it out from the back. So now you have some stitches going along. So I'm going to continue this process. So like I said, you're going to skip a space, pull through, then you'll go back, pull through again, and keep doing the same process until your strap is completely sewed to your bag. So once you've finished attaching all of the sides of your straps, now you have a cute little bag for the beach. So now we can finally start dyeing. So here's where things get a little messy. So you'll want to wear your gloves, and if you have long sleeves on, which I hope you don't, because it's pretty warm out this past couple days. So now for this one, you're not going to really have too much of a tie-dye design per se, but you will still be able to tie-dye a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some of my rubber bands, and I'm just going to pick like random spots on the case and just twist them up a little bit and put some of my rubber bands on it. Oh, well, that one didn't stick, so maybe we'll just do the straps. So for my straps, what I'll do is an accordion effect. So if you've ever made like a paper fan before, you'll go over and under, and you're basically just folding down your straps, okay? And you'll want to hold these nice and tight with your rubber band. Alright, so now I'm going to do it to the other strap, over and under. Redo that. So, if you went out on your nature walk and you collected some items, so I have a couple of rocks. I'm actually going to make I tried to make a design out of this. So I might want to, I'm going to make an H for Honora. going to hold down my leaves with my rocks so that they don't go flying away when I leave these outside to dry. Okay, so here's the fun part. And I actually, you know what I'm gonna also do? I'm gonna grab some sugar. Sugar is actually a good way to also add a design to it. And I'll do, you know, I might do some swirls of sugar around my pillowcase. Just give me 1 second. So I have some granulated sugar. I'm actually going to do some stripes along here. I add a little sugar, just, and now I'm just going to gather it together a little bit more so that way I have a nice, somewhat even line. Okay. Alright, so now I have my spray bottle, and I'm just going to spray onto my sugar first, and I'm going to spray on top of my rocks and my leaves. I'm gonna also add a couple like stray sprays on here. So this is going to be the front of my beach bag. Now I'm going to spray onto my straps. I also want the back of these ones, so I'm going to spray the back of it too. Alright, and then we're going to let this sit for quite some time. You'll want to let this dry for at least 24 hours. So I'm going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow when we come back we can remove the items and we can see how the design came up. Been probably about like 12 to 20 hours since I've let this dry. So since there is, let's see, yeah, it's completely dry. So I'm gonna remove all of my nature items from my pillowcase, and take these rubber bands off. Okay, and there you have it. Cute little beach bag. I can put my towels, my sunblock, and on my way to the beach. All right, so next up, oh, and also, I forgot that I put sugar on it, so let's see how that turned out. Got to brush off the sugar. So that's a cool way to add patterns, is putting some granulated sugar on the areas that you don't want to get dyed. All right, so next up, we're going to be making a regular multicolored tie-dye shirt, and then we will move on to our tie-dyed cupcakes. This recipe is a fun way to utilize the idea of tie-dye. We'll be making some tie-dyed cupcakes. So just to make it a little easier, I'm going to be already using store-bought cake mix. If your mom or dad or if any family member or even you has a recipe for white or yellow cake, you can use that recipe as well. I'm just making this a little easier by using already packaged, already made Betty Crocker white cake mix. So what you'll need is your cake mix. So this recipe actually calls for a cup of water and a half a cup of vegetable oil. I'm using canola and 3 eggs. You'll need a bowl, and you'll also need a few smaller bowls depending on how many colors that you want to use. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make it look like tie-dye, but I'm going to use 3 colors on one of my cakes. And I'm going to use a whisk. You can use a hand blender if you'd like. You'll need a cupcake tin. And I'm going to make some cupcakes because I'm going to actually bring it to my friend's. She's a pediatrician, so I'm going to bring it to the children's hospital. And I will be making a cake that'll be for my family. You'll need some cupcake liners, so that way they don't stick to your pan. But if you don't have the cupcake liners, you could always spray with a cooking spray like Pam spray. Just be very careful. So the first step to this, before we get mixing, is putting my oven to 350 degrees. So let me go put that on for a second. Okay, so now we can get to mixing, and also let me grab another bowl. So if you're not working by a sink or by a garbage can, I recommend always having an extra bowl for anything that is going to be thrown in the garbage. So I'm going to grab a little bowl to do that. Because I have my eggs in here, so I don't want to have this shell all over the place. And reminder, when you're working with eggs, after you crack them, go wash your hands. So after we mix this whole, and I washed my hands before I'm starting to bake, and then after I finish, I'm gonna wash my hands again, because this could cause you to get salmonella, and that's not good. So we're gonna keep our hands nice and clean, especially during this time. So I'm sure you're getting used to washing your hands a lot. All right, so I will open up my cake recipe cake bag. Use a scissor to open this. All right, so put my dry mixture in my bowl. Okay, and I'm gonna put the water in first because the water has a bigger amount, so it'll help it mix in easier. And a little trick when you're baking, if you create a little well or a little hole in the middle of your dry ingredients, it makes it a lot easier to mix. So I'm just putting a little hole in my flour, adding my water. Now I'm gonna add my half a cup of oil. This is canola. And I'm gonna mix this first before I add my eggs, just to get it a little bit saturated. Okay. And now I'm gonna crack my eggs. So I just want to be careful when I'm doing this because I don't want to get it all over the place, just because then I'll have to disinfect my table and all of that. So I'm going to crack it with this bowl first and crack it in there. And I'll put that there. Okay. If you need to use 2 hands, you could do that. Don't get intimidated that I'm using 1 hand. But if you do use 1 hand, please make sure that you don't get any shells. I'm gonna go toss this in the garbage and wash my hands. Okay, so now I can beat my eggs in here. So when you're doing this, you want to vigorously, if you're using a hand mixer, it'll go by itself on medium speed. If you're using a whisk, you really want to get this nice and mixed up. See, we're really getting that mixed up. Okay. All right, so I'm going to change this to an aerial view so that you could see me adding the colors to my cake batter. What I recommend also when you're transferring your cake batter into your cupcake tins, a trick is to use an ice cream scoop. It'll give you nice even amounts and it won't make it as messy. So hold tight. So I've divided my cake batter. I left a little bit of regular cake batter in my bigger bowl, but I have 3 different smaller bowls of cake batter. And I have I'm using neon ones because I want them to be bright. You can use any food coloring that you have. I just happen to have the neon ones from when I decorated Easter eggs. So you could also mix colors. So say for instance, you only have blue and red, you can make a purple out of that. So I'm gonna add a couple drops in each. Maybe like 4, should be plenty, because it's gonna be really light. Okay, my teal or blue. And should I use purple or green? No, I think I'm gonna use a lime green. Or I think this is lime green. I'm going to grab some spoons to mix that up. Okay, mix up my blue. Now you really want to make sure that you're mixing this in really well. Just because sometimes if you get a clump of food coloring, it will taste pretty bitter. I'm going to add a little bit more green to this. I want it to be a bright lime green. I think this is too pastel-like. All right, that should be good. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside. Bring in my cupcake in. All right, so this is how we're going to make the tie-dye part of it. So what you want to do is you want to add a little bit of each color, and here's where you'll start to see it after it cooks, but you might not see it just yet when you're putting this into the cupcake tins or in the cupcake liners. But I'm putting a lot of pink, and then I'm going to put a medium amount of blue and just like a dot or two of the green. And once the colors start to mix together from the heat from the oven, you'll start to see the colors start to mix, causing a tie-dye effect. And when you're filling up your cookie tins, oh, made a mess there. When you're filling up your cookie tins, you want to also make sure that you're only filling it up about 3/4 of a way. You don't want to overfill it because then it'll get puffy, and you don't want that. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to add some blue in here. And some green. Whoop. That's okay. It's gonna kind of be like marble effect too. So I'm not using all of my batter in here because I do want to show you how to do a cake with a different skill of creating the tie-dye effect. So I'm just doing a few cupcakes, and I'm going to use the rest of my batter in a cake. Okay. All right, so I'm going to also fill this up with some regular cake batter, and I'm going to put this in the oven. I'm going to follow my box directions on how much to cook it, but a simple trick is to put a toothpick in it, and if the toothpick comes out clean, that means that it's ready to go. So I put my extra food colored batter at the bottom of my cake pan after spraying it with some Pam spray. So I did want to show you another way that you could do this, but use your food coloring sparingly because you don't want to have too much of it. So I'm just going to put about 1 drop of each of my colors because I don't want to go too crazy with it. So you'll just directly put your food coloring onto your cake batter. So I'm using all 4 of my colors because I forgot the purple, but I did this to the remaining parts of my cupcakes. And you'll be using a toothpick, And here's where the fun part comes in. You're gonna use the toothpick to drag your colors around the cake. So I'm going to be mixing mine in a circular, but like I said, you could do whatever you want. If you do a design, I like going inwards too because it creates that cool, if you could see, kind of like that whimsical coloring. So I'm just going in, kind of making a star with it. Okay, and then you can put that right in the oven. Same thing, wait until the toothpick comes out clean, and don't keep opening up your oven. You're gonna let the heat out and then it won't fully cook. And you don't wanna ever eat any raw cookie dough because this, cake batter, because this does have raw eggs and it can get you very sick, so please don't do that. Okay, so we'll check on the cupcakes when they're done and we'll see how they turned out. All right, so I've left my cupcakes to cool. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of a cut so that you could see what the inside looks like. But I am gonna frost it too. So I cut it in half and now you have your beautiful tie-dyed cupcake. Actually put that to the side and grab a different one so that I could frost. So I have my cupcake. All right, so if you want to use tie-dyed frosting, you can do that, or you can just use regular frosting, whichever one that you'd like. So the way that I did this is I put a drop of gel food coloring or any food coloring that you have at home, and I put lines of different colors and used a brush. You can use you have to use a brand new clean paintbrush. If you want, you could use toothpicks, you could use a Q-tip, that'll be fine too. So now I'm gonna add my frosting right to the middle of this. Okay, and I'm gonna flatten this down a tad. Okay, because you really want to get that food coloring in there. All right, and I put this on saran wrap. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to slowly wrap this together to keep it in there. And I'm going to twist the ends so that way it's nice and tight. And you'll want to be able to grab the end of your saran wrap. So I'm just gonna also use my fingers to kind of mush this so that the colors get twisted. Okay, I'm gonna wrap that up. And now if you have a pastry bag, you'll want to put the pastry bag, the saran wrap of your frosting into this pastry bag. And I'm trying to get this saran wrap so that I could grab the end of it. Grab it. Grab this material. Okay, so I have my frosting bag here. Now I'm going to cut it. All right, so now what I can do is twist this up and I'm going to frost my cupcake. So I have my beautiful tie-dyed cupcake. Just like we did our pillowcase beach bags, you're gonna be doing the same type of process, except we are going to first soak our cloth. So I'm gonna be using a white t-shirt, tank top, excuse me, to make my tie-dye shirt. And we want to soak this a tiny bit into some vinegar. You don't have to leave it for too long. You just want to get it nice and saturated, squeeze all the liquid out, and then you can start dyeing. Just because the vinegar helps the food coloring set, because like I said before, with food coloring, it might fade a little bit just because it's not supposed to be meant to dye fabric, but it can be used, so that's why we prime it with vinegar. So I'm not gonna fill up my whole bowl, just enough so that I can saturate my shirt. So what you'll need, just like the other ones, you need some food coloring, and I am going to show you how to use the Kool Aid for your t-shirts or tank tops or whatever you're tie-dyeing. And then I also have a couple different options. So we said squeeze bottles, spray bottles. I have one spray bottle. I have a water bottle that I poked a hole in the top. I also have a ketchup bottle that was clean and emptied. And I'm also going to use a plastic container just so that I give you some options, because I know it's kind of tough to get out there and get shopping. And I'm also going to make this a little easier by using a silver aluminum pan, just so that I can have something to actually dye it in without getting it all over my finger. All right, so I'm going to put my shirt in here and just let it get a nice saturation. And some of you might not like the smell of vinegar. That's okay, it's gonna go away. This is just to help the colors really set in there. Okay, and now I'm going to wring this out as much as I can to get all that liquid out. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to lay my shirt nice and flat, and I'm going to put this at an aerial view so that you can see how I'm twisting up my shirt if you don't know how to do so already. Okay, give me 1 second. All right, so I have my shirt flattened out. So this is a basic process of how you'll do it. It might take some practice. I'm probably not that good at it either. It's been a while, but since before this program that I've done a tie-dye. So you're gonna take your pointer and your thumb and you're gonna pinch in the middle, and you'll slowly start to spin. And as you're spinning, hold with one finger so that you can get into the next crease, so that you can really give this a nice tight spin into a spiral. Okay, and as I'm doing this, I'm also taking my opposite hand because I want to be able to gather all of my other piece of fabric into a circular shape. So I'm really gathering it tightly. Okay, so you see how that's nice and circular. So now I'm also going to use my rubber bands to tightly wrap that up. Okay, so I have my rubber bands. So I'm holding this as I'm doing this and putting one rubber band vertically, and I'm going to put one horizontally. I'm also going to put two diagonally because I really want this to stay together nicely. Oh, that's my oven. The cake's in the oven, so I have to grab that, but we'll finish this first. Okay. Okay, so now you have a nice circular t-shirt or cloth. All right, so now I transferred my t-shirt into my pan. Put my gloves back on because we don't want to get my hands dyed. Kool Aid dyes very easily, and so does the food coloring, and it'll stain your hands, but after a few washes it'll come off, so don't be alarmed if your hands do get a little. So I already have my blue in here from when we did the pillowcase beach bag. So I have my blue. All right, so now I'm gonna use my, I guess we're gonna use red, so blue, red, you know what? Memorial Day is next Saturday. So I think I'm gonna just use blue and red for this t-shirt. Actually, you know what? Let me do a colored one, but if you wanna make one with blue and red, you could do that. So, okay, so I have my blue and I'm gonna use my red Kool Aid packet. This is gonna smell so good. Here's the tricky part, is not getting it everywhere. I'm gonna do this over the sink so I don't get it anywhere. And as you see, I only used about a half a cup of water because you want your dye to have brighter colors. So I didn't use a lot of water. Okay, and I'm gonna put my finger over this so that I can really get this nice and mixed without splashing the red all over the place. Okay, so blue, red, and I guess we'll use purple. That'll be fine. All right, so I'm going to put about 15 drops of food coloring. That's a lot, but it needs to be dark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. And I'm gonna give this a nice shake as well. And then I will show you how we'll decorate. So now that's nice and mixed. So basically all you'll have to do is just start coloring the sides of your shirt. I'm gonna do it in sections. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 sections. So I'm only gonna do probably like a third, a third, a third. So that way it's pretty even. So with my blue, that's the only problem, is that I'm gonna let my blue bleed into the other ones just because this is a spray. So I'm gonna try my best to keep it pretty sectioned. Flip it. Okay, now I'll use my purple. So the purple's not really, I think it needs to be a little darker, so I think I'm gonna use just the red and the blue like I originally planned, because I think it'd be kind of cool to just have it for Memorial Day. Try this so you can see. Oh. Okay, and I'm also using my hands to kind of mix that in there as well. Okay, so I'm going to continue to really get this saturated. I am going to leave some white spots. And then I'm going to transfer my shirt into a plastic bag so that I can really get it to dry. So I still need to let my shirt dry outside. So you want to let this dry for about 24 hours. Mine obviously hasn't dried for 24 hours because I just did it, but I let it dry for about an hour just so that I could show you what it looks like in its design. So I'm going to remove my rubber bands, and I'm actually going to lay my shirt over this bag, over my deck. So I'm going to be, because this needs to really dry, so I'm going to remove my rubber bands so that I can open up the shirt just to show you what the design looks like. Okay, so I took it apart. How cool. All right, so now I'm going to lay this on my plastic bag, and it smells like cherries. All right, so now I'm gonna let this air dry overnight. You want to move this over so that way I don't get this to stain my. So I'm going to let this dry overnight, and the next step is to care for your shirt. So we had our vinegar, so what I want you to do once it fully dries, you're going to take your shirt and you will be rinsing it with cold salt water. So put some salt and cold water into a bowl. You'll rinse it with salt and cold water, and then you're going to put it in your washer machine on a cold consistency. You don't want to use hot water. That'll make the colors bleed together and it might stain your other clothes, but I recommend washing this on its own. And do a rinse and spin cycle, put it in the dryer, and it'll be ready to wear. All right, girls, so I hope you had a fun time tie-dyeing with me today, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week and a happy Memorial Day. Bye.